There's something strangely beautiful about a city at dawn. Empty streets, bathed in yellow streetlight, the occasional hum of a passing car, and a sky caught between night and morning, like a dream that hasn't quite let go. In a worn-down apartment in Brooklyn, Olivia Rhodes sat in front of her laptop, wrapped in an oversized sweater, her eyes heavy, her hands trembling with equal parts fatigue and fragile hope. She hadn't planned to send the email at that hour, but it was the only time she felt quiet inside, when the city slept and the fear of failure seemed a little softer. A simple job application, a portfolio attached, no fancy wording, no real expectations. Just one last attempt from a young artist drowning in debt and fading dreams. 1:47 a.m. She clicked send. She didn't know she had attached the wrong file. Not the portfolio, but a photo. That photo. A photograph taken months ago when she was trying to reclaim herself. In the cold light of her apartment, no posing, no filters, just her, bare, unguarded, trying to believe her body still belonged to her. The confirmation email from Voss Creative arrived at 1:48. She opened it and froze. The mistake had gone out, and with it, everything she never meant to expose. Olivia hadn't slept. She just lay there, eyes wide open, heart heavy, playing out every worst-case scenario in her mind. Rejection, ridicule, maybe even legal action. Her mind wandered in spirals, through regret, shame, absurd apologies she'd never send. The sun had started to rise, casting gold across the cluttered floor. Her eyes stung, but still, she didn't blink. But at exactly 8:42 a.m., her phone rang. A woman's voice, low and precise. "Mr. Voss would like to see you, today, at 10. Olivia sat frozen on her bed. Julian Voss, creative director of Voss Creative, one of the most powerful figures in the industry, known for firing people over font choices, private, sharp, untouchable. She almost asked, "Are you sure?" but instead she whispered, "Thank you." By 9:56 a.m., Olivia stood outside a tower of glass and steel, her palms sweating, knees unsteady. The security guard didn't ask questions, just scanned her in. The elevator to the 47th floor moved faster than her breath could catch. When the doors slid open, she found a long, silent hallway ending in a frosted glass door. The office was cold, minimalist, all gray and white. Light poured in from floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows over the man seated with his back to her. He didn't turn, just said, voice smooth as a blade, "You should be more careful with what you send into the world." Olivia opened her mouth, but he cut her off. "You attached the wrong file, a personal one. I assume it wasn't intentional." She swallowed, cheeks burning. "No, of course not." Julian turned around. Tall, black shirt, no tie. A face carved in angles, eyes pale as morning fog. "I don't need an apology," he said. She blinked. "You don't?" He rose, each movement controlled. "What I need is someone who doesn't try to perform. Someone who doesn't look away when being seen." She said nothing. He handed her a folder. "This is not an offer for the assistant role. I don't need a secretary, Olivia. I need a midnight distraction, and I think you just applied." Olivia hadn't planned to return. She'd told herself she wouldn't. And yet, at exactly 9:58 p.m. that night, she stood in front of the elevator that led to the top floor of Voss Creative, heart pounding, unable to remember how she even got through the day. The doors opened, a man in a black suit nodded. No questions asked. The ride up was silent, smooth, and when she stepped out, the hallway was the same, dim, warm-lit, waiting. Julian was already there. No jacket, sleeves rolled, reading something on his tablet, a tumbler of amber in his other hand. "You're late," he said, eyes still on the screen. 10:06, she replied. "Still late." He looked up, one brow slightly raised. "But I'll allow it tonight." Olivia folded her arms, heart beating hard. "I'm not sleeping with you." He took a sip of his drink. "Good, I didn't ask you to." "Then why am I here?" He set the glass down, his gaze no longer cold, just still, unreadable. To remind me I'm still awake, still human. That's ridiculous. It is. This is insane. I shouldn't be here. And yet here you are. He said it quietly, no sarcasm. And I don't know why either. She should have felt objectified. She didn't. She only felt seen. Not as something to possess, but as something worth watching, like a painting people stare at too long, trying to figure out why it moves them. Sit, Olivia Rhodes. She did. No contracts, no expectations, no touch. Only silence, thick, strange, and somehow enough. They didn't speak much during the first few nights. Some nights were simply the two of them, quiet in warm lamplight, inside a room where silence wasn't suffocating, but sanctuary, a space to breathe without the burden of pretending. Then one night, he asked, not abruptly, not gently either, just a question that dropped between them like a leaf to still earth. What do you think makes someone dangerous? Olivia looked up, her voice soft as breath. When they know they can hurt someone and still choose to. He didn't reply, just nodded once, like filing it away into some quiet drawer of his mind. And another night, he asked, do you believe people can change? She waited a long moment before saying, only when the pain inside them becomes impossible to live with. No one wrote down these words, but they lingered, like footprints fading in sand, still too deep to forget. And then on another night, she told him, without warning, without tears, without asking for comfort, about the stepfather, the man who taught her silence was the safest language, about the mother who trusted pretty dresses more than the storm in her daughter's eyes. And about 16, the age Olivia began turning herself into a shadow, Julian didn't interrupt with pity. He just looked at her, steady, still, as if holding her pain in place so it wouldn't shatter. And then what? He asked, voice barely a whisper. Olivia offered a faint, almost invisible smile. I disappeared once, but now, I think I'm learning how to come back. That night, he walked her to the elevator for the first time, stepping out of his office with her. Julian Voss no longer stood as the silent silhouette behind the desk. He moved beside Olivia, as if even the quiet between them had learned how to follow. She looked at him, the hallway lights catching her eyes like questions that hadn't yet taken shape. Just before the elevator doors opened, she asked softly, "What if I stop coming?" He paused, gaze steady. "Then I suppose I'd start waiting. You know how to wait?" He smiled, gently, without armor. "I've waited for things far less important than this." The next night, a book lay on the table. Simple cover, worn pages. She opened it. Neruda. She looked up. "How did you know?" "You once left a quote on your resume," he replied. "The real one, page 78. Her chest tightened. It was a love poem. Not the sweet kind, the bleeding in reverse kind. That night, they stood at the window together, watching the city pulse with light. They said nothing, but the space between them had shifted. The following evening brought a storm. Olivia arrived soaked, rain clinging to her coat, cheeks flushed from the wind. Julian watched her enter, hair dripping, eyes calm. "You didn't have to come in this weather." "I didn't come for the weather." He handed her a towel. She dried her hands, then the hollow of her collarbone. He watched. A second too long, she noticed. The air shifted. "Do you ever think about the photo? The one I didn't mean to send?" she asked suddenly. His jaw tightened. "No." "Why not?" "Because I want to see you." "When you choose to be seen." She stepped closer. "What if I said, I'm ready?" "Ready for what?" "For more than just sitting across from your desk every night, pretending we're not both craving something we can't quite name." His voice dropped. "Then I'd say, take one more step and I'll forget every rule I made since the day I met you." She did. He held his breath, but didn't touch her. "You think you can undo me?" he whispered. She met his eyes. "No. I think you already are. I just came to witness it." His hand rose, midair, unsure. She didn't flinch. He brushed a wet curl from her cheek, his fingers ghosting along her jaw. "You're freezing. Then warm me." He stepped back. "Not like this." "Why not?" "Because if I touch you tonight, I won't let you leave." Her heart pounded. "What if I don't want to leave?" He looked at her, all walls gone. "Then stay. But you need to know, this isn't a game anymore." She didn't answer. She simply sat on the sofa and waited. And that night, for the first time, they didn't reach for each other to fill the silence. They reached to finally understand how long the silence had been waiting. They never called it a relationship. No labels, no declarations, just quiet nights, long stares, and a connection that didn't need names. But the world outside didn't wait for definitions to start judging. It started with a photo, grainy, distant, but anyone in the industry could recognize that office. Voss Creative. And the woman stepping out of the private elevator the next morning, oversized coat, messy hair, eyes still heavy from the night, was Olivia. The article didn't say her name, but it didn't have to. The internet didn't need facts to build a story. Comments exploded. Think pieces on power and ethics spread like wildfire. That afternoon, Olivia's inbox cracked open. Messages from HR, an email from the Internal Ethics Committee, a warning from an anonymous source. "Don't flatter yourself, you're not the first." She didn't tell Julian, not right away, but he knew. When she entered the office that night, his eyes were different. Not panicked, just prepared. "Trouble?" he asked, voice low. "Just office noise." She tried to smile. "What kind of noise?" He stepped closer. "It doesn't matter," she said, shaking her head. "It does," he said, gaze steady. "I'll take care of it." "No." Her voice was sharper than she meant. "I don't want you fixing everything, not this time." "Then what do you want?" She looked at him, exhausted. "I just want to exist in your world, without becoming a headline." He was quiet for a long second, then he said slowly, "You're not a risk. You're the only thing that makes sense." Then he paused, took a breath. "But if you want, we can leave, for a while. Italy, my place on the Amalfi Coast. No meetings, no whispers, no pressure, just us." She looked at him for a long time, didn't answer. But that night, she didn't leave early. And just before sunrise, he held her hand in the elevator, for the first time. And Olivia knew it was real now. The house sat on a hillside, facing the Amalfi Sea. No staff, no cameras, no alarms, just open windows, whitewashed walls, and the sound of waves hitting rock every morning. Olivia didn't ask why Julian had this place. She'd just stepped inside like she'd always belonged. Barefoot on the cool tile, hair tied loosely, wearing the shirt he'd left on the chair. She didn't try to look beautiful, and he didn't need her to. He just needed her there. They didn't make plans, didn't count days. They cooked with instinct, read books when it rained, and sat quietly together when the sun came back. Olivia drew. Julian learned how not to control everything. Together, they accepted silence as a shared language. One night, as she sat on the balcony, watching the shadows of waves slip across the sea, he brought her 2 cups of tea. Said nothing, just handed her a folded page. A sketch she'd made weeks ago. He had kept it, flattened it, framed it by hand. She looked at him and asked softly, "Why?" Julian answered simply, "Because when you draw, you don't hide anything." She nodded, placing the page gently on her lap. "I'm not used to peace that doesn't come at a cost," she whispered. He sat beside her, eyes soft. "Not everything has to hurt to be real, Olivia." For the first time, she believed he wasn't saying it to comfort her, but because he too was learning what it meant to be seen without performing. Olivia woke in the middle of the night. Julian wasn't beside her. She wrapped a sweater around herself, stepped through the still hallway, and found him standing in the kitchen, t-shirt clinging to his frame, phone in hand, eyes locked on the screen like it had stolen all the air in the room. "What is it?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away, just handed her the phone. On the screen, an article, this time with her name, full name, photos, harsh speculation about why she was chosen. One quote from a college peer: "Olivia was always quiet, the kind of girl with more secrets than stories." She stared at the screen, then at him. Cold. Not crying, just cold. "I didn't think it could get worse," she said, voice low. "I'm sorry," Julian said. "I should have seen it coming." "No," she cut in, eyes sharp. "You should have protected me before it did. I did everything I could." "No," she said, softly but clearly. "You did everything once it started affecting you." Julian stepped closer, his expression darkening. "Don't turn this into blame." "I'm not blaming," she said. "I'm just tired." She stepped back, gently but with purpose. Maybe we needed this noise to realize not everything survives in silence. Then she turned, didn't slam a door, just left it open behind her, wide enough for him to understand. This time, she needed space to breathe on her own. 15 days passed. Julian returned to New York, walking into his office like a shadow of himself. No one spoke, no one met his eyes, and he didn't need them to. He didn't go after Olivia right away. He gave her time, not to forget, but to remember who she was without being defined by someone else's gaze. But on the 16th day, he drove. 3 hours north to the cabin she once mentioned, the only place she ever felt safe. He didn't know if she'd be there, but when he saw a soft light in the window, he knew. She opened the door, oversized sweater, hair loose, barefoot. He didn't speak, just held out a folded piece of paper. She opened it. A sketch. 2 hands. This time they touched. "I didn't come to fix anything," he said quietly. "I came to ask for a second chance." Olivia didn't cry. She just looked at him, long and steady. "Why now?" His voice didn't waver. "Because I finally understand. Real doesn't mean perfect, it just means being willing to stay when it stops being easy." She nodded, gently, then stepped aside to let him in. The door closed, no promises, no conditions. Just 2 people, in a silence that no longer felt like distance. They didn't speak of what had happened. They didn't make promises. They just stayed, for days that blurred into each other, until one morning Olivia said, "Maybe we should go back." Not because they were ready, but because they were willing. They didn't return with headlines. No social media announcements, no public apologies. They just came back. Olivia was no longer the nameless assistant. Julian was no longer the man who had to hide affection to preserve authority. When he introduced her to the creative board, he simply said, "This is the director of her new arts fund, an initiative she designed herself, for the artists no one ever sees." Some whispered, some stared, but Olivia didn't flinch. She didn't lower her eyes. She stood tall, gaze steady, no longer waiting for permission to exist. She left a sweater draped over Julian's office chair, a sketch on his desk, her favorite coffee mug by the window. He didn't move them, he left them there, traces of someone who no longer visited but belonged. Julian had changed too, not softer but deeper. In meetings, he let others speak first. When he fell quiet, it wasn't to control, it was to listen. And every evening, as the lights dimmed and the city slipped into its artificial calm, he still looked toward the chair across from his desk, the one she used to sit in. Not out of waiting, but as a habit learned by someone who finally understood how to hold on without holding too tightly. That night, They stood on the balcony of the high-rise, looking out at the city that once broke them. Olivia wore a simple black dress, hair tied back. Julian handed her a small box. Not a diamond, not a proposal, just a thin gold bracelet, delicate like a whispered promise. She stared at it for a long time, then looked up. "I never thought I could belong in a view like this." He touched her cheek. "You've always been the view. I just needed to look up." They didn't get married that year. No love contracts, no grand declarations. Just slow mornings, evenings with someone waiting, notes left on the kitchen counter, a hug after a hard day, a glance that said, "I still see you." And sometimes, when Olivia couldn't sleep, she'd ask, "Do you remember the night I sent the wrong file?" Julian would smile, "I remember everything that happened after." Because some mistakes don't break us. They break us open. And behind that crack, if we're brave enough to walk through it, is something more real than anything we ever planned for. Something we didn't name, but always knew. And sometimes, the most beautiful beginnings wear the disguise of error.